This release tightens security boundaries across critical areas, starting with exec approvals, where unanswered requests now fail closed by default. Previously, if no human responded before the timeout, the system would approve the command by default. Now, unless you explicitly configure a permissive fallback, timed out approvals are denied. That's a meaningful shift in default behavior, and the PR description confirms it's intentional. Operators who rely on silent auto approval will need to set ask fallback full explicitly. Beyond approvals, image redaction in transcripts is now more robust. Previously, base64 encoded image payloads could get corrupted when secret redaction patterns like AWS key prefixes matched part of the encoded data. This release fixes that by validating image payloads upfront and preserving them as opaque media, while still redacting adjacent text and fake image-shaped secrets. The PR includes live proof showing corrupted transcripts can now be repaired by replacing invalid image blocks with replayable fallback text. On the host environment side, several new environment variables are now blocked before execution. Rust-up toolchain overrides like rust-up home and rust-up toolchain are now rejected in request-scoped calls, while inherited operator values remain supported. Similarly, interpreter startup variables like bashops, fpath, cache env, and tclibpath are now denied, and Git protocol controls like git allow protocol are filtered to prevent loosening transport security. All of these changes stem from a coordinated effort across 14 pull requests with focused testing and live verification in each case. The evidence shows consistent patterns. The shared host-env policy is updated, macOS policy mirrors regenerated, and regression tests added to lock in the new behavior. While some changes are backward incompatible for setups relying on the old defaults, the documentation and PRs clearly outline how to restore prior behavior if needed, usually by explicit configuration. This release makes Telegram delivery significantly safer and more coherent, especially for multi-step interactions. First, the user-facing behavior. When streaming answers across tool calls, intermediate blocks now stay visible instead of vanishing or getting overwritten. Previously, if the agent checked multiple tools and reported findings like site A shows X before moving on, that intermediate text could disappear when the next block arrived. Now, each assistant messages blocks are preserved in their own Telegram draft, and rotation only happens when the next message truly begins. So users see the full reasoning chain, not just the final answer. Second, the underlying mechanics are more robust. Draft chunking is now shared consistently, and durable dispatch deduplication lives inside the SDK, meaning fewer duplicate or lost messages. Callback handling uses concrete, stable APIs instead of ad hoc logic, and account scoped topics now route to the right agent without falling back to unnamed group handling. Crucially, unauthorized direct messages stay out of both cache and prompt context, reducing accidental data leakage. Performance and security get quieter improvements. The /compact command now reliably delivers its status notice, even in message tool only channels, by marking replies to bypass suppression, and compaction hook messages no longer suppress built-in user notices. All these fixes are non-breaking. The plugin SDK surface stays unchanged, and the changes are fully tested with focused regression suites. In short, Telegram users get more predictable, complete streaming responses. Operators get more reliable Command X and better isolation. And behind the scenes, the dispatch pipeline is now cleaner, safer, and easier to maintain. This release significantly improves iMessage reliability, especially around recovery and delivery behavior after restarts or network interruptions. First, user-facing behavior. iMessage now reliably recovers inbound messages that arrived while the gateway was down. Instead of losing those messages or requiring manual catch-up configuration, the gateway now automatically replays them on startup using a persistent row ID cursor. It also deduplicates inbound messages using claimable GUIDs, preventing the same message from being delivered multiple times, especially after bridge reconnects. And crucially, the existing block streaming true config now actually works if you enable it. You'll see interim progress messages before the final answer, instead of waiting silently until the end. From a performance standpoint, idle, no target approval discovery is now bounded to one pass per account per process. Previously, even when no approval prompts were pending, the system would repeatedly scan recent chats every 60 seconds, causing CPU spikes. Now, after the first no target scan, it skips further scans until the next restart. keeping the gateway lean during idle periods. On security, there are no changes. This is purely a reliability and efficiency update. For maintainability, the old 850-line opt-in catch-up subsystem has been removed and replaced with a unified, persistent dedupe layer, shared with WhatsApp, Signal, and other channels. This reduces code duplication and simplifies further debugging and testing. All of this is backed by real-world evidence. Live macOS tests show messages sent while the gateway was down being replayed on restart, and the block streaming fix was verified with actual Apple Messages database timestamps, confirming interim messages now appear during long replies. So in short, iMessage now handles restarts and idle time more gracefully, delivers messages more predictably, and finally honors your streaming config without breaking existing setups. This release brings several important fixes around browser and MCP connectivity, especially around how existing sessions connect and how OAuth flows behave in real-world environments. First up, when you configure a top-level browser.cdp URL and also select default profile user, the endpoint now correctly applies to that existing session profile. Previously, the top-level URL was ignored, and Chrome MCP would fall back to auto-connect behavior, even though you explicitly set an endpoint. The fix ensures the normalized CDP URL gets applied during profile resolution, so your configured DevTools endpoint is honored. The PR includes live test output, confirming Chrome MCP now receives browser URL with no auto-connect or user data dir fallback. Second, the MCP loopback HTTP server now properly supports streaming HTTP transport. Before, a get to /MCP returned 405, which caused clients like Claude Code to hang indefinitely during initialization. Now, authenticated get /MCP returns a clean SSE stream with text event stream. Delete /MCP returns 200 statelessly, and post remains stateless with no session ID advertised, exactly as the MCP spec expects for a local loopback server. Tests and real curl-based proof confirm the fix resolves the hang and handles auth, origin rejection, and shutdown cleanly. Third, browser tool output is now safer. Line start media directives from page-controlled text are neutralized before reaching the model. This matches the existing screenshot vision defanging behavior and preserves structured details for callers. Tests cover AI snapshots, ARIA snapshots, and tabs output, and live runtime proof shows the neutralizer working as intended. Finally, MCP OAuth flows get a few critical fixes. The legacy 127.0.0.1 redirect default is preserved for compatibility, but if an authorization server rejects it, the client now retries with localhost. OAuth error responses are no longer surfaced as object response. They're normalized so the real error text is readable. And JSON schema patterns with invalid Unicode escapes, like PayPal's HTTPS, now get repaired before Typebox compiles them, preventing crashes. All of these changes are focused, well-tested, and backed by real behavior proof, making them safe, user-facing improvements to core connectivity and tooling. This release cuts control UI startup and first reply latency through 4 targeted optimizations, each validated by focus tests and real-world timing checks. First, the UI now reuses model metadata from chat.startup. Previously, even a clean startup would trigger a follow-up RPC to fetch model details. Now, if chat.startup already returns usable metadata, that second call is skipped entirely. That's a direct latency win on first load. Second, the startup catalog wait is capped at 25 milliseconds, down from 750, only for chat.startup. Other gateway endpoints keep the original 750 milliseconds timeout, so this change is narrow and safe. The catalog load still starts early, but the UI no longer blocks waiting for it during initial metadata resolution. Third, the system now traces the first assistant event with a new first assistant event timing phase. This lets developers split first message latency into gateway runtime versus browser paint, helping pinpoint where delays actually occur. Fourth, slow first replies now trigger a visible warning. If the first assistant reply takes too long to paint, the UI surfaces that as slow true flag, making it easier to catch regressions during development. Finally, slash commands load lazily. In the past, clean startups would always fire commands.list after model metadata, even if no slash command was needed. Now commands only load when you actually type slash or open the command palette. That removes an unnecessary RPC from the critical path. All 5 PRs passed extensive unit, gateway, and end-to-end test coverage, and auto review found no actionable issues. The result? A snappier, more responsive control UI on first load, with better diagnostics for ongoing performance work. This release expands provider support with several key improvements, starting with user-facing behavior. OpenRouter now supports OAuth onboarding, making it easier for users to get started without manual API key setup. For Claude Fable 5, for Claude Fable 5, adaptive thinking is now integrated, which appears to refine how the model handles complex reasoning steps during execution. A critical fix addresses codex session compaction ownership. When both context engine and codex native paths are active, the context engine now retains primary responsibility for budget-driven compaction. The codex native compaction only runs as a bounded secondary step after the context engine completes its work, preventing race conditions that previously caused compaction to be skipped or misrouted. This change also clears stale thread bootstrap metadata before the native follow-up, reducing the risk of inconsistent state during session handoff. Another visible fix improves the TUI's verbose mode. Previously, dynamic tool progress, like long-running shell or Python tasks, would show only bare tool labels instead of live output. Now, progress results are normalized into TUI-compatible content arrays, so users see actual tool output updating in real time during verbose full mode. The PR describes this as a direct fix to the event shape mismatch between app server protocol fields and what the TUI renderer expects. Under the hood, local models now skip Guardian review entirely. When the effective reviewer context isn't OpenAI, such as with LM Studio, Ollama, or other custom providers, the system falls back to user or plugin approval instead of attempting model-backed review. This avoids unnecessary delays and errors, especially in development or air-gapped environments. The PR notes this as fail closed. Only explicitly OpenAI qualified reviewer models with trusted transport may use internal exec auto review. Performance and maintainability also see incremental gains. Dynamic tool progress normalizes cleanly across the stack, and Gemma 4 reasoning replay is preserved, meaning detailed reasoning traces remain available for debugging or auditing. Security boundaries around exec auto review are now more precise, with trust gates explicitly scoped to provider context rather than just model aliases. All changes are backed by focused regression tests, real TUI observations, and live Discord lane validation, though live LM Studio Ollama round trips weren't run in this review.